jokes were bad.
Villains, villains, villains. They can be iconic, they can make films memorable, and even though they're not critical in every story, a weak villain will lessen your movie or story overall, whereas a strong villain will make it stand out, even if the film has other weaker aspects. Now today I'm going to be talking about the bad guy in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. However, I'm not going to be analyzing what makes him a good villain, but rather, I'm going to be explaining how this movie did a great job at introducing him. Because just like in real life, first impression in movies are king.
No one cared who I was till I put on the mask.
And this bad guy's first impression was amazing / scary. If you really want your movie bad guy to stand out as something special, then the thing you have to do is unveil them on screen in a way that makes the audience instantly go, and leaves an impression that lasts not only to the end of the movie, but until the end of time itself. And the question is, how do you do that? The simple answer is, just write an incredible introductory scene. Write a scene with our bad guy that successfully holds for several minutes with tension and dread and never breaking. In other words, just be Christopher Nolan. The issue is, most of us are not Christopher Nolan. Most of us will never be Christopher Nolan. So then what about us? Are we just kinda out of luck here? Are we destined to write mediocre, forgettable villains to join the ranks of Steppenwolf, the Joss Whedon version? I mean, how can we ever aspire to introduce an antagonist as one of the all-time greats if we aren't allowed to build that antagonist up through their actions and choices before that introduction? Well, don't worry, because there's actually a couple different ways. A couple screenwriting hacks that work so well that you don't even have to be that talented to successfully use them. So here are the options. 1, you can build your villain through your hero. 2, you can build your villain through the aftermath of their actions. And 3, you can build your villain through pure, good old hatred. In Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, they chose to go with option 1. So let's take a deeper look at how they did this to carve out a permanent spot in the audience's brain where the villain will stay in some capacity forever. Firstly, even if you aren't able to build up your villain through their actions before the introduction, you can circumvent this restriction by building them up through the actions of the hero. And the first example I'd like to give is Arnold in Terminator 2: Judgment Day, where in the beginning, he heads out to a bar where he encounters a bunch of dudes he has to fight, and the main purpose of this, story and character-wise here, is to build up the core attribute of the Terminator. Right? I mean, when we see Arnold breaking people's bone with his bare hands and seemingly not responding to pain, that makes it very clear to us, the audience, who and what he is. An unstoppable brute force. That is the Terminator's core attribute. And now that the film has established that, we return to the primary mission, which is to find John Connor, and when he does, we finally run into the main villain, the T-1000. And at this point, we know absolutely nothing about the T-1000. We don't know what he's capable of, and frankly, we have no reason to even take him seriously because he's picking a fight with something 3 times his size that we now know is an unstoppable force of nature. The only way this could ever end for the T-1000 is very badly, until... At that very moment, we realize that the Terminator's core attribute of being an unstoppable force also applies to the T-1000, and possibly even more so. Just with that small tussle in the hallway where the T-1000 manhandles the Terminator, all that buildup we did for our hero transfers over to our villain. And that's why immediately we take the villain seriously. That's why immediately the villain has made himself home inside our heads. That's why immediately, at least for the time being, the villain has achieved greatness. In a nutshell, we spent a good amount of time in Act 1 of Terminator 2: Judgment Day establishing that the Terminator is an unstoppable brute force, only for the T-1000 to then step in and wipe the floor with him. In Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, we all know Puss as a fearsome warrior because that's his reputation. And the beginning of this movie also solidifies this reputation by showing him in action subduing this earthen giant, pretty much building him up as a strong protagonist. However, when he is met with the big bad wolf, he gets completely outclassed, to the point that it looks like he doesn't even know what he's doing. And just like that, the confident warrior becomes a doubtful coward. All the attributes of skill, viciousness, and boldness have now transferred over to this mysterious villain who has hijacked the show. And right away it's like, holy shit, who is this person? Who is this person that can beat our hero at their own game? how the hell is our hero going to ever defeat them? These are questions typical to a great villain introduction.
That's the power of fear. But fear is a choice. To conquer fear, you must become fear. You must bask in the fear of other men.
Fear is defined as an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain, or a threat. In the scene where Puss meets the big bad wolf for the first time, fear is the primary emotion being felt by both Puss and the audience, because there's a belief that this mysterious individual is dangerous and likely to be a threat. Now, what evidence is there to lead us to this belief? Well, for one, the change in music lets the audience know that there's a change in the dynamics. What we first thought to be a safe and pleasant environment could now potentially become a dangerous one. Not to mention that the demeanor and presence of the hooded individual also indicates to us that his intentions are bad. But these are all just basic elements of fear, so let's take it one step further and analyze what makes a movie scary. What exactly is the most effective type of fear a fictional movie can utilize? Obviously, this is a topic that could fill its own entire full-length video, but luckily, as always, I have the right answers. And the answer is fear of the unknown. The reason is, you can make your monster as scary as you want. You can make it the most hideous, most lethal, most terrifying creature ever created in the history of mankind. And it doesn't matter, because no matter what you do, the monster is never going to be as scary as the human imagination. This is why masks are scary. This is why darkness is scary. Why faceless watching figures are scary. It's the knowledge of something being there coupled with the uncertainty of what it is exactly. Fear of the unknown. Let's take a look at one of my own personal favorite scariest horror movies ever made, which is another Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, Predator. To me, what makes Predator so effective is the fact that it's practically built around the fear of the unknown. We don't know anything about this monster villain. We don't know what it does, we don't know why it does, we don't know how it does, and we don't even know what it actually looks like until later in the film. All we do know is that it's somewhere out there and that it's not going to stop until it gets you. In Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, we don't know anything about this so-called bounty hunter. He hasn't appeared in any of the previous films, we haven't seen him in action yet, and when he does finally fight with Puss in the bar, we see him completely dominate our protagonist. This makes our imaginations run wild, especially since the fight doesn't end there. Puss manages to escape and there's no conclusion to the duel. Therefore, we are left with a lot of time in our hands to think about this wolf. The more our minds build him up to be even scarier and stronger than he actually is, because we don't know anything about him other than the fact that he's somewhere out there on the hunt for Puss in Boots. So that concludes today's video about how to introduce a villain in your movie, and if you couldn't tell already, I really enjoyed Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, so if you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. I know it's a kid's movie, but I love Puss in Boots because Shrek 2 is one of my all-time favorite animated movies, and it always brings back happy memories from my childhood. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, don't forget to subscribe and comment down below what movies you'd like to see me analyze. Shrek 2, Avatar 2, you let me know, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.